So the group known as the Proud Boys has been designated a terrorist group by the New Zealand government. I wonder how much debate was had how much thought, is going into all of this. This whole thought process. Of the Proud Boys. Let's see what we have, what they say here. Someone said it's pretty effed up that both New Zealand and Canada has labeled the Proud Boys a terrorist group, whilst the United States has not. Yes, this is the left. Let's face it, we're now in a third world country. We have lost credibility. We might have had with the rest of the world. 2016 was just the beginning. Because the people who do labeling are around the Proud Boys themselves. Not really true. And here's one that compares ISIS to Trump supporters. They're the fanatical ones, not the far left. They're not fanatical at all. As a matter of fact, they deny their fanaticism. Try to debate them. See what they tell you. Go in and see if they'll be violent if you go in and try to recruit if you're a conservative group. Biden and the Democrats have said that Antifa is just an idea and it has no head. And that Antifa doesn't exist. I can remember when J. Edgar Hoover said the mafia didn't exist. Now this idea of Antifa in Portland, it shot a man who was, I guess, a Trump supporter. I forget the man's name, but it seems like he hunted that man down and he shot him. You'd see plenty of the riots in Portland. They would stop traffic. One man got kicked in the head by a gentleman by the name of Keith Love. I believe an Antifa and Black Lives Matter supporter, who was also a woman beater, turns out. I did a show on him as well. So people with this idea have killed people. And of course, like the mafia, they're criminal. So they're not going to advertise all of their organizations, although they do have organizations on Twitter and on social media. The Proud Boys was started by Gavin McInnes. I think he said he started it as kind of a joke. And now they're considered in New Zealand a terrorist organization. And in America, many of the left consider them a terrorist organization. But we see there is no debate, no discussion, or at least no open discussion. January 6th, they will bring that up. And the elites believe that it was worse than the summer riots because it was the capital. Nobody says that left-wing violence or right-wing violence is a response to left-wing violence. Could it be that? Could it be that the right often gets violent as a response to the left, who often are the ones that seem to initiate force? Are we allowed to examine this? It doesn't seem that way. And the internet doesn't make it any easier. The internet that used to be a place, I guess the information age, it's no longer that. It is the age of censorship and punishment. And that's what I've noticed about the internet. High Ridge Estate says hello. But you cannot debate about certain things. You cannot discuss certain things that certain groups find offensive. Corporate media wants control, and they want to control the narrative. If I'm wrong, tell me. They have an ideology and a belief, and if you go against it, you will get punished. If you become too big, they will shut you down. Because a lot of these so-called anti-hate groups or so-called perhaps even civil rights groups, well, they're on one side of the ideological spectrum. And if you go against them, they seem to take care of you. Again, I mentioned before, and I'm going to do an episode on this. I remember I had Colin Flaherty on, and this was, I think, 2013, maybe 2014. It was shortly after, I believe it was shortly after the Trayvon Martin incident. By the way, that whole thing has been also reworked by the establishment. But we had Colin Flaherty on, and at the time, this was just before he had written his other book, White Girl Bleed a Lot. Or this was during the time he had written the book, White Girl Bleed a Lot. He was working on the other book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. And he talked about the denial, the deceit, and the delusion about black on white mob violence and black and white racial hostility. And then he added to that black and all other group racial hostility that he documented in his articles and in his YouTube page. And I kind of put out there that, because he was not, at this time, he was allowed on the internet. The internet wasn't as censorious as it is today. And I reminded him that Rod Serling, who did The Twilight Zone, had done a dramatization inspired by the murder of Emmett Till. And the corporations said it would be too inflammatory and too offensive. And now, years later, the late Colin Flaherty in his work, even though it's true, is considered too offensive and too inflammatory. Certain groups will get upset. And again, he was on the internet for a while. He had a YouTube channel, but it would often get taken off. YouTube is far more censorious than Twitter, in my opinion. But both are rather bad, and they both lie. They will lie in order to keep their ideology alive and promote their ideology. Truth is not the biggest value. It is ideology. And I'll get into that ideology later on. But they have an ideology about racism, an ideology about fairness and equality, and it is their ideology that must be adhered to. All others must be silenced, and they will silence by force. They will use violence if need be. Many of them are fanatical. 2020, we saw the rise of the little Pol Pots running around. Now, there's a person on here that says I pronounce it wrongly, but Pol Pot, little Pol Pots running around. They think that they know what's best for anyone. They will not discuss. They will not openly debate. And if you get too popular, or if you say something that they consider too inflammatory, they will strive to punish you and hurt you. That's the way in which we're living in today. This is primarily an economic, ideological war that we're under, our economic oppression that we're under. We are living under that today. Those of free-thinking thought who see the world the way it is are under attack. And these people do not want debate or discussion. And that is the way it is. Anyway, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and I thank you all for listening to the show. Those few that listen, thank you, Scott, for listening. And by the way, if you disagree with what I say, then say why. And I'm not a coward, Howard. I just have to get to bed.